Welcome, Dr. Pape. It is such an honor and a pleasure to meet you. I am familiar with your work, and thanks to these YouTube channels, I've seen a lot of your thought and about what's happening in Israel, Gaza, the catastrophe that we are facing at this very moment. So thank you for all that you do to help us understand the context, the history, and for our King and Breaking Silence audience, we would like for you to do some of that contextualization for them. And of course, if you could summarize some of the myths, and as you do in your book, 10 Myths of Israel. Of course, you go over it very thoroughly. We have a limited amount of time. So I sort of pulled out a few of those. Mm-hmm. The myth that Palestine was a barren desert before the Zionist project, the land without a people for a people without a land. Could you tell us something about that, please?
Yes. Thank you, Zahara. It's a great pleasure and honor also to meet you. And thank you so much for having me in this very important platform. Yes, let's get into it. The myth that Palestine was a barren desert, surprisingly, it's still supported or is still something that people in important positions in the world still subscribe to. When Israel celebrated its Day of Independence just a few months ago, the president of the EU said that Israel bloomed the desert, namely that Palestine was a desert and Israel bloomed it. I mean, and this is the president of the European Union, a very powerful person, is still subscribing to this. So let's quickly say something about both of them. I must say that also in the book, I'm less concerned whether the Jews were people without land or were not people without land. I see this as a narrative that many Jews believed that they were the descendants of the Jews who lived in Palestine 2,000 years ago. I have my doubts whether they are the descendants of these Jews, but that by itself doesn't harm anyone. You know, if Zohara, if you tell me, I think that my ancestor 2,000 years ago were there or there, I may, as a scholar, say I would like to check it or not, but there's no harm in this. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That is the less important one. What is important is that they claim not only that they were the people of that land, but that that land had no people for the last 2,000 years. And that's a dangerous myth because there were people on the land. And if someone believes that these people on the land do not belong to the land, there's always a danger that someone would use force to remove them. Mm-hmm. So let's just get the record correctly, because there's so much literature, there's so much documentation, so much evidence to show that before the Zionists arrived in Palestine in the late 19th century, Palestine was a vibrant society. It had a very rich rural countryside and a very educated and important urban elite as well. There were hundreds of thousands of people, probably more than 500,000, living there, seeing themselves as part of the country of Palestine, see themselves as part of the Arab world. Quite a few of them saw themselves as part of the Muslim civilization. They were undergoing processes of modernization, becoming a nation as well. Everybody was becoming a nation in the 19th century. There's nothing new about that. But the one thing we can say with 100% certainty, Palestine was inhabited by the Palestinians on the day that the first Zionist settlers arrived. And not only that, even with all the efforts of the Zionists from the early arrival in the 1880s up to the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, the indigenous Palestinian people remain the vast majority of the people, despite of the attempt to create a settler state there. So I think that's a very important myth to debunk, especially the myth that Palestine was a land without people. It is a fabrication, and as I said, it's a dangerous one.
Would you just speak more about what you see as the role that we here in the U.S. can play?
Yes. Yes, I think first of all, you're absolutely right. I still see people argue, especially in the West and especially in the United States, with this definition of what Israel is doing as a genocide. But I think anyone who knows the facts and knows something about the definitions of genocide cannot come to any other conclusion than what we are watching, as you say, daily, is a genocide, and it is not a genocide that is going to end soon, unfortunately. So that's very important. Yes, the American position, for me, it's not a surprise that either a Democratic or Republican administration would give Israel a carte blanche, would voice some concern, but a meaningless concern, and would give Israel the time to continue with its policies on the ground. This is not surprising. Anybody who knows the history of American policy towards Israel, anybody who understands the power of the lobbies in plural. People think there's only AIPAC, but there are many more lobbies in America that have been working for a century. A 100-year multi-layered lobby is one that ensures that politicians like Biden don't even have to be reminded by the lobbies that they should give Israel a carte blanche. This is something the American system would have to deal with, and hopefully a younger generation of American politicians will be a bit more immune to this kind of pressure. Now, what can we do? What can be done? Because whether we like it or not, America is probably right now has the power to stop at least the killing on the ground. I think the international community, the global South, would have also the power later on to maintain that kind of pressure. But the immediate ceasefire has to go through Washington, it seems, despite all the very noble efforts by countries such as South Africa and Turkey to bring, and lately also Chile and other countries. That would not be enough. The key is in Washington. I think we both know that if your activism is not producing what you want it to produce, you don't sit and lament about it. You say, so maybe I have to double my efforts. Maybe I have to triple my efforts. Maybe I have to think out of the box. Maybe there are other things I can do legally, politically, morally, and not give up every day to think again, am I doing enough? Am I doing everything that I can? Am I building the right coalitions and alliances? And I think this is not criticism. This just means that, the proof is on the ground. The proof is on the ground. Does a year of election in America, can the conclusion for me from the outside, I'm not an American, I'm looking at the year of election 2024, and I ask myself, electorally, not just for a president, but also to those who should be looking for positions in the Congress.
Yes.
Is it electorally wise to support Israel or to condemn the genocide? And if the answer from America would be, from most politicians, including the presidential candidates, it's better to support the genocide than to oppose it, then the problem, it's not only the Palestinians that have a problem.
Yes.
The whole United States has a problem. If this is the moral face of America, that supporting a genocide is an electoral bonanza, is an electoral asset, God knows what is the future of America. Is that, first of all, you need to understand that the Judaism and Zionism is not the same. That's very important. There's a difference between religion and ideology, between faith and ideology. White supremacist Aryan nation people in America are not the only Christians, are not representing Christianity, nor does their ideology equate with Christianity. And the same is true about Zionism and Judaism. So that's one thing to remember. It's also good to know, although we cannot change the language there, that the Arabs are Semites as well. So this whole idea that Jews, you are anti-Semite, is ridiculous. But the most important thing I really think is, and I always suggest it to people who are intimidated when people try to silence them by weaponizing the anti-Semitism. And people, it's not nice to be called an anti-Semite because it means that you are racist, and people don't like to be called that. Nor do they want other people to think about them in that way. And my suggestion to anyone who is knowledgeable about what goes on in Palestine and knows a little bit about Judaism and about Zionism, and most people know, even people who sometimes are kind of shell-shocked when they are being attacked as anti-Semites. Remember that the people who equate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, or criticism on Israel with anti-Semitism, can only be one of two things. Either they're totally ignorant, which is possible, and then you should tell them that they're ignorant and send them to read something, and don't continue the conversation, because if they don't know anything, how can you have a proper dialogue with them? Or, which is worse, they know the truth, but they are lying and they're fabricating. So either they're idiots or liars, but you should not be intimidated or terrified by this, because morally, scholarly, academically, factually, any way you look at it, anyone who stands against the genocide in Gaza, anyone who condemns the occupation of the West Bank, anyone who condemns the apartheid system against the Palestinian citizens of Israel, anyone who supports the right of the Palestinian refugees to return, is someone who is against racism, is someone who is against colonialism, and is someone who works for humanity and human rights and civic rights. So if someone like this is being condemned by someone as racist, they should be immune from these kinds of accusation, because they are standing for noble ideas and they are struggling for justice.